Take me back to Janky Town. I want to get back to Janky Town.
You mentioned the number 2, and I
Mhm.
know that, we're in, for those who can't see, we're in Colin's toilet studio. And it just occurred to me, you said you enjoy the number 2, to say the least. And it just came to mind that, number 2 is pooping, and it just spurred on the thought of why is that number 2?
That's
who
the
decided?
$1,000,000
And
question.
I imagine that.
This is going to be funny too, because I hope this will probably just be like retreading the same path over and over again, which is I'm totally fine with. But James and I talked about this yesterday, and this is good because it's good practice for me to rehash my little pitch. So to me, it is a coincidence, or on the outset, it would appear that it is a coincidence that the number 2 represents both duality, which I think underpins or undergirds as. Do you know Eric Weinstein?
I don't know.
The intellectual dark web.
Vaguely, yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about this later. But he used the word undergird, and for some reason, gird is just like a funny kind of like old-timey word for me. Anyways, the number 2 undergirds or underpins, I think, all of what physical existence and reality is. I think it's like kind of the lowest common denominator. And this is, you can see this in any sort of day and night, black or white, man and woman, any sort of like now even all our internet is based on basically a duality too. Binary ones and zeros is a duality. So it's funny how like shockingly simple it is, and yet how amazingly ubiquitous and robust it is too. And then I think even like if you want to get more abstract, like dark matter, we can't see it, but we know it needs to exist or antimatter needs to exist for matter to exist. We have like, I guess, proof of this, which is funny because is anyone smart enough to actually say whether Stephen Hawking is right or not? This is another thing. We kind of just like take all that. Like, it's funny, the translation of all these really, like Neil deGrasse Tyson is probably a great medium, but it's like, or Carl Sagan, where like we have to, someone has to like translate this into something that we can understand, but we can't actually know. Like there's a bit of faith involved in something that's such a hard science. That's kind of funny to me. Anyways, so it is a coincidence that this big, large, fundamental life force of duality is also, so duality is by definition the number 2. The number 2 is a duality. So the number 2 also is some like euphemistic code word that we've come up for shit. So it is a coincidence, or ostensibly is a coincidence, but if you look at the word coincidence, it is actually just the word coincidence. So 2 incidents. So the word itself is a duality. So now you have the number 2, which is its own duality, and then you have the concept of duality, which is its own duality, and they're locked into this relationship of a coincidence that is actually its own duality. So this is a theory that I'm working on called the toilet bowl effect, where if you break anything down, it will actually just become a series of never-ending dualities that spawn more dualities.
Toilet bowl effect.
And it's because the effect is kind of like circling around a toilet bowl, and it always ends up with the number 2. So they're in the that's where the 2 things fuse together. That's where the 2 dualities of like, all the entire concept of what physical reality and life is combines with shit, which sounds like, and they seem like they're polar opposites that are connected by this number, but then also shit in a way is also a fundamental building block of life. It's where everything springs from, and it's like the beginning and the end of everything. So that's in a nutshell how I feel about the number 2.